Right now, you're listening to the Azim Digital Asks podcast, the podcast where I, Azim, talk to some of the top marketers in the industry, find out everything about them, how they got to where they are today, and more importantly, sharing some really useful marketing tips that will help everybody listening to this become better marketers. Stay tuned for another great episode. Hello and welcome back to the Azim Digital Asks podcast, the season finale. Cannot believe 45 episodes in and the fucking worst tech issue I've ever had before this episode. So I'm really sorry to my guest, Shep. I am here. Got a fantastic guest. Before I introduce you, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who's ever listened to this, shared it, liked it. Even if you've listened for 3 minutes, person in France, I know who you are. I will find you. I would love it if you could like, share, rate, all the usuals. That's enough nonsense from me. Fantastic guest, and we're talking all about podcasting and the benefits of podcasting for your business. She is the awesome Christine Zirnheld, better known as Shep, part of the powerhouse podcasting team at Marketing the Clock, describes herself as the real housewife of digital marketing, 2020 PPC Hero, rising star in PPC. She does a podcast, she contributes to Search Engine Journal, she's got a book, she works for Cypress North. Somewhere in between that, she does sleep as well. Shep, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And do not worry about the tech issues. I was saying before we started recording, I'm like the perfect person to have tech issues with because as a podcaster, like we just deal with it all the time. The other day I was doing a marketing talk and my volume was down, so I couldn't hear them. And I thought my headphones were broken or something. And it was just the volume. So you do not have to worry about me. And I'm so happy to be here and finally talk to you.
Yes, it's awesome. We briefly discussed before the show. I've made a massive error in thinking that we'd already known each other because I watch your show on YouTube and I'm like, oh yeah, we're besties. You've never seen me before.
Nope. I've seen a lot of your Bitmoji though.
Oh yeah, he's much better looking.
Oh no.
But yeah, listen, I would love for you to give the audience a better introduction to yourself. So who are you? What do you do? The floor is yours.
Sure. So I am a digital marketer at Cypress North, a digital marketing agency in Buffalo, New York. First and foremost, I do a lot of PPC, a lot of Google ads. I do a little content here and there too, but that's my primary focus. And that is my primary focus on Marketing a Clock, our podcast, which we have new shows that we release every week.
Brilliant. And I am coming for a Clocksker this year. And if I don't get
I can't believe you've never won a Clocksker.
Gutted, absolutely gutted. Anyway, we move on. Would you like to give a brief intro to your podcast as well? And then we will get into fun and games before we talk about podcasting in more detail.
Yes, so we are a news show, a digital marketing news show, and we talk about SEO, PPC, and social media marketing mainly. We record every week and we release new episodes on Friday with all the news from the past week, at least before Wednesday. We do our best. Sometimes we have to go back and add more news, which isn't fun. And as my co-host Greg Finn says, nobody really cares about the news, so we try to keep it light, keep it fun. There's a lot of really terrible puns in there. And if you've been paying attention to digital marketing news lately, it's not always the best news. We get a lot of bad news, unfortunately, from some of the ad platforms in particular. So there are a lot of rants in there too. So that's always fun. And last year we decided to do a deep dive episode with industry experts. This all started because Google was making changes to their partners program that we were like really, really unhappy about. And we just could not stop talking about it on the show. Greg in particular, we just like couldn't get over how terrible these changes were for advertisers and how bad they were going to be for our clients from an agency perspective. So we decided to pull some friends on. We pulled on Andrea Cruz and Julie Bacchini, and we kind of ranted for a while about these changes and what they meant. And that turned into Marketing a Talk, which are our monthly deep dive episodes. We do a new one every month. And we get to talk to really fun people. So we do the news and those deep dives as well.
Awesome. And I'm temporarily going to complain for 1 second because on your last episode, I heard the word GIF, which, Jess, I think it was Jess.
Was it me?
No, I think Jess said GIF, and I was like, what? I just was listening and I had to pause it and like, what? So that was not
We
great.
go back and forth about GIF versus GIF. Like, I just want to be controversial and say whatever the other person's not saying.
Okay. YOLO, I like it. Right, before we get into podcasting, thank you to your wonderful co-host, Greg Finn. I asked Greg to speak to full-time producer Caleb, Mark, Jess, and of course himself. So I asked all of them to describe you in one line. So I'm
Oh
going to
no.
read one line
What?
out to you. You've only got one guess, okay? You
Okay.
have to guess who said this. So 4 lines, 4 people. You need to get 4 out of 4, otherwise, when your team listens to this, there's going to be some serious
Yeah.
conversations.
Okay. Oh no, you put me on the spot. Okay, I'm ready.
The first person said, I quote, confident with a can do attitude and a sense of humor to match. Who said that?
I think that was Greg, and I think he was trying to trick me because he knows I don't think I'm confident.
Sadly, you are incorrect.
No!
That was full-time producer Caleb. So you're 0 for 1 right
I
now.
should have known. Okay.
The second person said, diamonds aren't a girl's best friend. Search terms are.
Mark?
Correct.
Okay.
Redemption.
Okay.
Right, 1 out of 2. The next person said, I quote, you cannot describe Shep in one line. You'll need about 60 lines, and even then, it would only be half the things you could say about her, all of which are amazing things.
Okay. Oh man, I think that's Jess. She's usually the nicest.
Okay, I won't tell you because then you'll know who said the
Right,
last
right,
one.
right.
So the last person said, I quote, a force of nature that was born to entertain.
Yeah, that was Greg. So the other one was Jess.
Yep, you are spot on. 3 out of 4, not bad.
Wow, I'm pretty proud of myself.
Yeah, definitely some apologies need to be made to full-time producer Caleb, though. He
Yeah.
must be really sad about this.
He's called me confident before and I corrected him. I'm like, Caleb, I'm faking it. So I thought maybe he learned his lesson, but I guess he didn't.
Oh, right. Let's get into the meat and bones of this episode. We are going to be
Okay.
talking all about podcasting and the benefits of it. And who better to talk to than, as I described you, powerhouse of a podcaster. So my first question for you, Shep, is if you could assemble your dream lineup for a Marketing Go Talk episode, who would it be?
This is so hard because we've had so many amazing people on already, and there's so many amazing people out there to talk to. This week, we're releasing an episode where we're actually talking to a banana, but that would not be my dream guest. So be ready for that one. But I would have to say it's a panel that was already on is my first answer. I'm cheating and giving 2 because I wasn't there when Ginny, Marvin, and Anu were on for a PPC focused episode in January. I was on maternity leave, and I had such FOMO because, of course, Ginny is like Google Ads. It was before she was the Google Ads liaison, but that would be so cool to have her back now and like hear from the source. Sarah complains a little louder, and Ginny's awesome, so I'm sure she could help us. And then Anu is just the nicest person in the whole world in PPC, and I love to get her perspective on everything. And when we get too ranty, I mean, she's just a great counterbalance for that. And then my other answer to this question is we have never had you on Marketing a Talk, so we need
This
to do
is my
that.
secret pitch to get on. It worked. No, I'm joking.
No, but honestly, I would love to have you on Marketing a Talk. That would be so fun.
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, my concept of time zones is horrific. So yeah, anytime you want me, I'll be there as long as it's before like 9 p.m. my time.
9 p.m. your time.
My day begins at like 3 or 4 a.m. So before the end of this episode, I'll probably be asleep. Anyway, less about me, more about yourself. Brilliant answer. Thank you very much. As someone who is an experienced podcaster, you've been doing this for much longer than me. What do you think the benefits are of podcasting?
So when we started our podcast in particular, as an agency, the idea was to get more performance-driven clients. Like the idea was to find people who cared about what mattered. So if someone is listening to a marketing podcast, we would hope that they knew a thing or two about marketing and that they would care about performance. But it's evolved so much more than that. Overwhelmingly, the biggest benefit has been the people we've met and that we've gotten to learn from in the industry. We even have a Discord community now, community.marketingoclock.com if you want to join, where people in the industry who listen to the show are sharing successes, stories, and questions. As I said, we're in Buffalo, and everyone here is kind of born and raised here. It's one of those towns, and it's so valuable to be able to talk to people from all over the world, like you, that have different ideas and hear different perspectives on things. So that's definitely been the biggest benefit. And then from a sales standpoint, we actually have another podcast, our agency now, called Agency Scoop, and it is hosted by our Chief Growth Officer, Jill Fetcher. And between the two shows, Marketing on Clock and Agency Scoop, we're kind of using them in the sales process. Like, we're gearing the Marketing a Talk content and the Agency Scoop content around like holes we can fill in the sales process. So we have one coming up on an Agency Scoop about development, because we have development at our agency as well. And if we have 30 minutes to pitch to a client and we're not able to say everything that we want to say, we can say, here, we have this episode where we talk about it, and we can send it after. And if they want to watch it, that's great. If they don't have to. So working it into the sales process has also been really valuable too.
Awesome. Thank you very much for sharing that. Really, really interesting. You mentioned at the beginning of your answer about when you started, so my next question follows very nicely from that. If you could do this all over again, what, if anything, would you change?
So there's a few things. I actually wasn't on the show when it started, full disclosure. I've been on for about 2 years, and I think it's been on for about 3. So they used to do a live show, and they definitely, from what I've heard, would not do that again. And I have no interest in doing it. I think it kind of holds you back, because you're so afraid of messing up that you can't like be your authentic self, and you don't want to misspeak or like report something incorrectly, ever. That would be terrible on a news show. So you don't have that net. Actually, Greg used to say, live without a net. Well, now we have a net. So if we ever say anything incorrect, we have another chance to go back and fix it, which is just really gives us peace of mind. And I think allows us to open up more. Like I said, we try to be funny. And if a joke doesn't land or something, it's not the end of the world. So I'm really glad we don't do it live. On the other hand, we used to record on Thursday nights, and we always release it on Friday. So we would record at like 4 p.m. on Thursday. And this was like during the pandemic, and it was just too much to first of all record it. We wrote articles for the show, and then we would have to cut it and edit it that night, upload it. It was just way too much and stressed everyone out. So we needed to give ourselves enough time to edit as well, which is hard as a news show. Other formats, it's a little bit easier, but I would definitely recommend people give themselves enough time to edit when they set up the recording schedule. We're also still working on a good studio space, which is something that I wish we had prioritized earlier. Like, it's almost comical. When we first started, we were in what we called the annex at our old office, and we were dealing with train tracks, and there were people like I used to joke around that people were tap dancing above where we were recording. It was so loud in there. And now we have this beautiful new office that we purchased and moved into earlier this year. But we don't have our studio set up yet. So I'm actually like right on the side of the road right now, and you guys can probably hear some cars driving by. And it's really hard for full-time producer Caleb to edit our episodes and make our audio good. So we're working on our studio, but I wished we had done it earlier. And then finally, I also wish we had done Marketing a Talk sooner. As I said, like, we haven't even been doing it for a year. But it's just opened up so many more possibilities, given us more time to talk about the things that we want to talk about and that matter to people. And it's also good promotion for the show, because we have these amazing experts in the industry like Azim when you come on, and they're able to show the show with their platform, with their audience, and hopefully grow our listeners. They'll come to listen to Azim, and they'll stay to hear my weird QVC stories, hopefully, is the goal there.
You're far too kind, but I'm sure my horrific accent is going to put off a lot of your listeners.
No way.
Believe it or not, I'm a podcaster who hates his own voice, so I'm going to do less talking.
No, I'm a podcaster who hates my own voice too, so I don't think you're the only one.
But yeah, thanks very much for sharing that. Really, really interesting. I'm not sure if it's the same for yourself, but certainly for me over here, I speak to people who are interested or want to get into starting to put podcasts out or begin to get into podcasting, but something always seems to hold them back. So I'd love to hear it from yourself. If there are people listening to this who are interested in starting their own podcast, what advice would you give to them?
So the biggest piece of advice that I have is to just do it. There are really so few barriers to entry, and particularly we use Anchor to host our show, and you can do everything on Anchor. It makes it so easy to distribute to all the podcast platforms with your RSS feed. You can even edit the show in there. Greg was showing me today, you can edit the show on your phone, which is like, so you don't even need a computer to have a podcast, really. As far as like mics and stuff like that go, Greg handles it. And you want to do some research to make sure you have the right equipment, but it's so easy. And there's, like I said, there's no barriers to entry, really. So it's for everyone. And you just learn, if you make it like part of your job. So for us, like I said, we're doing the news. It's making me stay on top of the news all the time, like, which is making me do better work for our clients. And I'm sure you have a similar situation where you're talking to people, you're learning more about the industry, and it makes you do better work. So if you kind of work it into that, it makes it all worth it, the time and everything.
Yes, plus one, 1000%. Couldn't agree with you more. Some of the conversations that I've had with people, I've learned so much, and I've deliberately gone out of my way and sought to talk to people who specialize in areas of marketing that I don't know a lot about, purely so I can learn more from them. And there was a point where I thought, I don't care if like one person's listened to this. This is a really valuable conversation that I've had, which I think others might find valuable. And when you talk about barriers to entry, yeah, spot on. The only thing for me that I really dwelled on was that I had an episode where I had a brilliant guest on. I'm not going to tell you which one because it's still out there. And she was either wearing like a bracelet or a necklace, and you could hear it like jangling all throughout the episode. And I spent hours and hours trying to edit it.
Oh,
That's
man.
one thing that I would definitely like change and include in my briefing. So I would see that as a mistake that I made. And talking about mistakes, I'd love to hear from yourself. Some of the biggest mistakes that you've either seen made or bonus points have made yourself when podcasting.
Yeah, so we've totally been there. And that brought to mind, like, I used to have ice in my cup on the show. And I'd listen back and be like, why did I have ice in my glass? Like, what was I thinking? And mistakes. I mean, I have so many mistakes every single week on the show, just like flubbing when I speak, first of all. Our producer, Caleb, just is doing the Lord's work, making me sound as good as I do every week. So that's definitely something I do all the time. But also, I think people just not or underestimating how much work it's going to be. Like I said, there aren't a lot of barriers to entry. Like anyone can set up an Anchor account and go for it, but there is effort involved behind the scenes. And I think that people might not be prepared for how heavy a lift is, especially if you're doing it on your own. Like I said, you need to give yourself time to edit it. We had a story on the show last week where Pamela Lund retweeted Jack Butcher, and he said 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 3. Of those 200,000 left, 90% will quit after 20 episodes. To be in the top 1% of podcasts in the world, you only need to publish 21 episodes. So congratulations, Azim, on being part of this elite club.
You can't see me, listeners, but I am doing the most awful dance you've ever seen. Come on.
Yeah, so it's like anyone can do it. It just takes time. So just underestimating the time and commitment that's going to be involved, I think, is why people don't get off the ground. I think it's going to be like only the time recording. And as you know, so much more goes into it than just the time spent recording.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, boring 20-second life story, I do this completely outside of work because I have a normal job. Not that this isn't a normal job, sorry, but I have a regular job. And outside of that, I edit it, publish it, get it up on my website and distribute it. So it's completely separate for me. So sometimes it's hard juggling the two. But anyway, that's my boring 20-second life story over.
I would also say you have a great system like setting it up and doing it remote, but we could never really figure that out when we were remote for COVID. So that was a mistake we made too, just going through like the different ways we were going to record remotely. And I just hope we never have to do it again.
Yeah. I'm quite looking forward to, once it's safe to do so, doing it in person, because I think you might be able to get a lot more from people. I love the fact that for me and you, we can see each other. My earlier episodes, we couldn't see each other, which was quite hard. So I'd always have like a Google Meet on the side and trying to balance the two, but it can ruin your internet connection. That's one of the problems with remote recording. Anyway, another bit of my boring life story over. So, question for you. I think you've already touched on this a little bit, but I'd love to hear more. Again, I consider you a pro at this. So you need to explain the benefits of podcasting to someone who doesn't quite understand the medium. How would you do that?
So I would just say it's really about connecting with people. For example, I'm a big fan of true crime podcasts. And just imagine 10 years ago saying, I'm a fan of true crime. Like, you sound completely insane. But because there are so few barriers to entry and anyone can just upload a podcast and connect with people all over the world, anyone can really start it. And it's like a really good way to find people that are interested in what you're interested in. And as a marketer, it's a way for us to connect with people in the industry who are doing the same work as us every day and experiencing the same challenges. And the podcast allows us to connect with them and get a different perspective. Like, an overwhelming majority of our stories are just people on Twitter like, hey, did you see this new feature in the wild? Or, hey, look at what I found buried deep in this Google Help document. And for us, this really forces us to stay on top of everything that's going on. And we hope for our listeners that we can be a source for them to come to if they don't have time to go through all those tweets every week like Greg Finn does because he's crazy. That they could just listen to our show and know what's going on. So it's really about finding the people that share a common interest as you.
Love that. Love Greg as well. Love all of you guys, to be honest. Great bunch of people. Definitely very high up on my list of people to meet once it's safe to do so.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, a question that I've asked a few other people before, but again, something that I'd love to hear from yourself. Where would you recommend people go if they wanted to learn more about podcasting?
So, like I said, I'm really lucky, and Greg and Caleb do most of the technical work as far as editing our show and the equipment goes. I really love NPR podcasts, and they have an article, How to Start a Podcast According to the Pros at NPR, that I would consider to be a great source as a jumping off point if you need one. But I think also it's just about listening to podcasts and learning what you like to hear and what you don't, and finding mediums that you find enjoyable to listen to. And I'm sure that there are other people who will. So for example, I really like to listen to comedy podcasts. So I like to bring that to the show and try to make people smile. So I think that's a big part of the research, is just listening to other podcasts and learning how they do it and learning from their mistakes too.
Absolutely. Right, we're almost coming to the end of this episode, which is a shame because it's the end of this season as well, and Azim needs a break. Azim's got to eat. I've also got to stop referring to myself in the third person. I would love to hear from you, Shep. What's one really cool thing that you've done with your podcast?
Yeah, so I keep answering every question the same way. But the coolest thing that we've done with the podcast is the people that we've been able to meet. And I haven't even been able to meet anyone in person yet, but I'm so excited to meet people in person. Like, hopefully some conferences happen in the coming years. The people we've been able to connect with is amazing. We also make some pretty cool swag on like a smaller scale. Like, we've made this awesome Rockstar PPC shirt last week. So not as big of a deal, but we make some really cool merch, and we're able to like make fun of the industry and keep our work light, which is great.
No better thing than that, as long as you and the team are happy. Absolutely. Shep, you've been an awesome guest. Before I let you go and give you the supreme honour of having the final word, not only at the end of this episode, but at the end of season 1, I would love for you to share where people can go to find out more about you, the podcast, where they can follow you, how can they get in touch?
Yeah, so first I would like to congratulate you on season 1. Amazing. 40-something episodes, right?
45, I think.
That is awesome. What an accomplishment. In the top 1% for sure. And we can't wait for season 2. And thanks for having me on your last show. So to connect with me, first of all, our show is on every podcast player, Marketing O'Clock. You can subscribe to us on YouTube at youtube.marketingoclock.com. We'd love for you to join us on Discord. As I said, we have channels for PPC, SEO, social media. We share business memes. It's just really fun in there. Lots of rants, as you can expect. And that is at community.marketingoclock.com. I am at Shep Zirnheld on Twitter, if you want to find me there. And then I'm really trying to make Marketing O'Clock TikTok happen. So if you want to give us a follow, we are at Marketing O'Clock.
Just get Mark in front of the camera. Your followers will go through the roof.
Yeah, I'm sure they would. That's a good idea.
Right, Shep, before I give you the last word and end the season, from me to you and everybody else, thank you very much for either taking part, listening. I had a couple of weeks break, but before that, 44 straight weeks of episodes, sometimes twice a week. I've really enjoyed it. Definitely time to step back for a bit. I've got some big plans for season 2. If you've enjoyed it, as I mentioned, please leave a rating, tell a friend, and then tell that friend to tell 2 more friends, and listen to Marketing O'Clock as well. I've tried really hard to get guests on the show who are women primarily, and primarily from minority and underrepresented groups, and I'd love to continue to do that. So if you want to be part of season 2, I don't care if you've got 100 followers, 10 or 1, if you fit into those groups, get in touch with me. My details are all available. But from me to everybody else, thank you very much. This is where I shut up. Shep, the supreme honour of ending season 1 and your episode goes to you. Thank you for being an awesome guest.
Thank you. It was so fun being here, and I hope we can do this again soon.
So that was another great episode in the bag. I'm really enjoying hearing from some brilliant people in this industry. If you enjoyed this podcast, please follow me on Spotify. Please leave a rating on Apple Podcasts or whichever platform you are using. Tell a friend to tell a friend, and hopefully see you for the next episode.